Hello, and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're so
Yeah.
glad that you could join us this morning. I'm here with my good buddy Mark. How you doing today, Mark?
Doing well, Caleb. Excited to be here. I tell you, only our second episode of the rebooted Moonshine Jesus Show, but I'm already back into as soon as we finish the last show, I start looking forward to getting into the next one. So it's fantastic. It's a good feeling, man. And
It is so much fun. So much fun.
And it's so cool to hear from everybody. We've heard from so many folks who are new fans. We've heard people who were part of the followers from the early version of the Moonshine Jesus Show, who are being so kind and having so much fun along with us. So I hope that they're with us. I hope they've poured a drink if they're able. Admittedly, our timing right now, some people it's going to be harder than others. But how about you? Were you able to bring a drink along for the ride, Caleb?
I was. And so today I've got a themed cocktail for what we're going to talk about today, which is
awesome.
The Righteous Gemstones.
Yes,
which
indeed.
is on HBO. It's a lot of fun.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
kind of a parody of church life, mega church culture. And so one of my favorite characters, Mark, in The Righteous Gemstones is Baby Billy Freeman.
Baby Billy. Wow.
Baby Billy.
He is special.
He's special, and he's not a baby, right?
No.
He's a 70-year-old man, if you haven't seen
his gray hair is kind of telling. All gray hair, yeah.
And do you remember the first time we met Baby Billy, where he was, Mark?
I'm trying to remember when we first met him.
You'll remember as soon as I say it. Okay,
he was out
naked in a bathtub on the front lawn of his property. Well, his wife brings him out a glass of milk, and he declares, "Sweet ambrosia." Do you remember this? Sweet ambrosia. Ambrosia, is the food of the gods, which is telling about who Baby Billy is. And so today I've got a cocktail from the Educated Barfly. It's called Baby Billy's Sweet Ambrosia.
Well played, sir.
You
seriously upped your game.
I've got something else.
Game from the first. Oh, good. Go for it. Tell me. I want to know.
Yeah, you're gonna love this, Mark. Okay, so it's made with vodka, and rum, coconut cream, honey syrup, and it's garnished with nutmeg. But the vodka is from Mulholland Distilling, and one of the owners of that is Walton Goggins, who plays Baby Billy.
What?
Isn't that crazy,
dude? You have really not you've embarrassed me. It's really my game is so amateur in comparison to your game.
Good.
That is,
let's see. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking one of my go-to favorites, Elijah Craig Small Batch. I drink it it's kind of the one I keep around the house to sip on.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying that neat, as I have a tendency to drink them. But I really like this themed cocktail. We'll have to see if we can do more of that in future episodes. So, but listen, we're already laughing about this show. We're not hardly talking about the show. So I think that maybe we should go ahead and have our first drop and really come back so we can get into this.
Let's get into it.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine?
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. And if you're just joining us, we're getting ready to talk about the HBO comedy, The Righteous Gemstones. And this is an incredible show. And it's about this megachurch pastor family in South Carolina. And it is as if they read the Bible and then they decided to do everything the exact opposite in their lives.
Right. It is pretty remarkable. And I hedged real quickly when you said it seems like they read the Bible, because I was like, I'm not sure they ever did, really. I agree. They're doing a lot of the opposites. I think they did a lot of Bible drills as kids and learned a few verses. And I'll leave it to you. You keep us going here.
I don't know, Mark. That's maybe true. That sounds a lot like the people I know who maybe learned a lot of Bible drills in
Uh-huh.
their early childhood, and then that never
Hey,
translated to how
I was one of them. I was one of them.
you were one of them.
I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, Greystone Baptist Church, Asheboro, North
Ah,
Carolina. Not there anymore, so I can talk about them.
yeah.
But I did. I learned. I did Bible drills. I learned my. I don't know them anymore. Thank goodness. But I was
Well,
definitely part of a very Southern Baptist conservative upbringing in a small North Carolina town. So, I probably wasn't real far from a similar upbringing, at least religiously, as Eli Gemstone and his
but
kids.
hopefully, though, most folks who grow up in those kinds of traditions do not end up like the Gemstones, because
I
their
don't think the world
lives
could handle
are
that.
messes. No, we couldn't, or we couldn't
No.
handle any more. It is maybe a slight exaggeration. Well, I hope it's more than a slight exaggeration, but it's an exaggeration, I hope, of the way that megachurch pastors really are. But I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of truth in it too.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have seen headlines and we have heard stories that have been done, and even documentaries that have been done that tell us that this is true for certain megachurch leaders. I hesitate to call them ministers or pastors in a lot of ways, because one of the things that the show brings out pretty quickly is that the focus of what's going on is really about power, prestige, and money. More so than anything else, right? I mean, which
That's right.
Gemstone, of course, that's the last name, right?
Of course, it's the perfect last name for this whole family that is obsessed with money, and they're just using the church to, line their pockets, to strengthen their bank accounts. And I'm not sure if they believe anything or not. There's a lot of
Yeah.
religious language, but I don't know. Do you think they
Well,
believe any of the stuff that they
yeah,
are preaching on
what?
Sunday mornings?
I actually do. I think they're trying to portray a particular type of what I tend to call Americana Christianity. It's a pop Christianity kind of way of approaching, and I think that there is this need, or maybe unquestioned belief that they got when they were kids, that there is a God, and that this God chooses and blesses. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of jabs at prosperity gospel going on here.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that's beautiful about it, is that your question of do they believe in anything, I think, is part of the beauty of the show, is that us wondering that tells us that maybe these characters don't. Maybe it really is all about becoming powerful, and maybe it is all about having all this money and influencing people, and because I mean, all the storylines are around money, are they not? I mean, there's very few that aren't ultimately about money.
I think that's right.
Money
Ultimately
and power.
about money and power. And I think that's one of the dangers of, even outside of the prosperity gospel, the whole idea about salvation only Christianity, that
Mhm.
as long as you're saved, you can do whatever you want. You can act
It's
however you want in the world.
and boy,
And
do they. And boy, I mean,
they do. They do.
from they went to what was their version of a Southern Baptist conference down in Atlanta or whatever, and a bunch of the leaders end up like doing coke and having prostitutes over, and record it gets recorded, which is once again, I'm jumping into this long before I needed to say, look, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. There are very few that we will do that will be spoiler-free. But yeah, I mean, particularly season 1, the whole storyline ultimately revolves around one of the son's children records them in a hotel room doing the coke and having prostitutes in the room with them and everything that goes on. And it is, like you said, they'll do anything for the money. And if they have read the Bible, they certainly aren't caring anything about what it's talking about. The pursuit of power and money is much more important than the pursuit of caring about people and doing the things, that book happens to tell us we should be about.
Yeah, that's right. The first season in particular, I think we see them just unravel. I mean, they're not very raveled to begin with, but everything in their life just kind of unravels,
Well,
especially Jesse Gemstone, which is the
yes,
oldest son, Danny McBride. He's the guy who's writing the show, came up with the show.
yeah,
And and yeah, that relationship with him and his oldest son, Gideon, is
yes.
really interesting. And I think Gideon is an interesting character, right? Because Mark
I
was
think he's
saying
a
that,
great character.
yeah, Mark was saying that, that Gideon, the older son, is the one who caught his dad doing coke in a hotel room, and Gideon comes up with this scheme to blackmail his dad,
Right.
and the first
Without his
season kind
dad
of
knowing it's him.
without his dad knowing it's him, and the whole first season kind of revolves around this plot, and Jesse trying to keep his stuff at the convention a secret. And so what do you
Yeah.
think about that relationship with him and his son Gideon, and when
I
Gideon
think it's
comes
the
back?
Yeah, I think it's the most important relationship in the show, at least in the the first season. In that, I think the son, and I'm blanking on his name all of a sudden. The son that's blackmailing him, and I'm just blanking on his name right now.
Oh, Gideon.
Gideon. Yeah, I think that Gideon sees through some of this falsehood. Like he's the
Yeah.
first in the lineage. He's the first generation to say, "Wait a minute, there's some crap going on here." That, and not that I think that he's particularly religious, but maybe
Right.
has this thing eating away at the back of his head that has a little higher moral standard, and is like, all of this is crap. I'm calling out the hypocrisy, and I'm going to get mine by. So I'm not saying he's a great person, but he does
Yeah.
seem to see through this facade that they're painting, that they're putting up, and trying to show the world that they're this perfect family. When the truth is, they're getting everything wrong, man. They're getting it all wrong.
Getting it all wrong. And, yeah, he's not, I mean, he's blackmailing his dad. He's working with other people who are willing to use violent means to get money from his family. And then he's kind of sneaking behind his family's back. But at the end of season 1, there's kind of some redemption and some repairing of the relationship
Yeah.
between Jesse and Gideon. And at the end of season 1, I don't know how you felt, but I was kind of hopeful about some of the characters. I was hoping that, maybe some of them would have some change happen in their lives, but
All right, you have this advantage on me. I will say I've only watched
Yeah.
season 1. I did not get into season 2 yet. I did feel more hopeful at the end of season 1
Yeah.
for a little bit, not for
Yeah.
long. I think we also saw the other the brother to Jesse, Kelvin. We saw him melt down too. Like he starts like emotionally just breaking apart. Like there is no. But I will say, I started thinking about the real life people that these characters are most
Right.
likely based on. Not a
Right,
one-to-one person, but the type of people. And I went, no, this is who they are. Like, so right now it feels great, and it feels like maybe there's some redemption going on, and maybe there's a little bit of hope. But then I realized, no, unless there's really bad writing going on here, these folks are going to fall right back into their who they are, and what has allowed them to have this this lifestyle that's well above the average citizen's lifestyle. They're going to want to have that. They're going to want to keep that. And I just don't see it. I don't see it. I see them trying to change a little bit,
Yeah.
but I see that, I don't know, being too difficult, and it being easier just to slide back into what I used to do, because I know how quickly that can give me what I actually want, which is power and prestige and money.
Yeah, and I hope that, by the end of the series, maybe we
Mhm.
see some growth, but I will say that when you get into season 2, you don't see
Yeah.
much growth.
No, I wouldn't
I
expect,
mean,
if
they
I
gotta
had to
carry on the
guess,
show too, right? They got to carry
Right.
on the show.
Right.
They got to keep going.
and that dynamic is working. So why would you write it out? Right.
That's
But
right.
I do
Yeah.
think there is the opportunity to redeem some characters. And I think we saw some
Yeah.
seeds at the end of season 1 planted. Of all people, I think we might see Eli ultimately get more redeemed. He might
Yeah.
sink lower for a little bit, but he's starting to see, like, the scene where he is with Jesse in the church in the Sears.
Yeah.
And he starts to fall apart, and he goes, "I can't do this without your mama anymore."
Yeah.
There was a moment there I went, you know what? He's starting to see what this has created, what it's made his kids, and how, because I do think that character wants his kids to be good people. And he doesn't necessarily see himself as a person who's only about power and prestige, although it's very clear he is.
Yes,
And he's starting to see a reflection of himself and not realizing it in his kids and not liking it. So I kind of feel like that might be the character that we have some hope for down the road, maybe.
I hope that's true. I will say that part that you said about him sinking lower does happen in the second season. And we find out a whole lot more about Eli and his background and what his life was like before he met Amy Lee. Remember, he said, like, I was a different person before I met Amy Lee. And we get to find out more about what that was like.
Ooh, that should be fun.
It's a blast, but we don't see a lot of redemption so far in the second season. So, I think 6 episodes have dropped so far in the second season. And it's been fantastic.
I cannot wait. Well, look, I do think, though, and one of the wonderful things is it's just great to watch, and there you do see the reflection of pop Christianity and prosperity gospel and all that. But it has some real lessons, or at least launching points for discussion on real life topics.
Absolutely. The political implications, theological implications on our lives as we see these characters for real in the world.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about that in just a minute.
Great. Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Today we're talking about the Righteous Gemstones, and we're going to delve into this crazy family and what kind of the real life iterations of this family look like and what that means for us. And so one of the examples that popped into my head most clearly, Mark, was thinking about Jerry Falwell Jr. And you and I have talked about this offline a couple of times, but in a recent Vanity Fair interview, he said that he didn't really believe any of the things that he had been propagating all this time as the president of Liberty University. He didn't believe any of it. He was just declaring it for money and political power. And so that's exactly what I thought of as I'm looking at the Righteous Gemstones. I'm looking at this real life example of someone who finally admits that he didn't even believe any of the stuff that
and people honestly would be probably floored at, it's not like a massive percentage, but it's a bigger percentage than you think, of ministers who are in the pulpit who for a lot of really good reasons have ultimately lost their faith or don't necessarily believe everything that they're talking about, because they found themselves in a similar situation where they were kind of, life pushed them in this area and they could make the really hard choice of stepping away and saying no, or they could just try to do their best, what they can do in it, and have a better life because of it. It happens a lot. And I think that bringing up Falwell is brilliant, because it really is. It's the perfect counter image to what's going on here, of the question that you brought up in the first segment of, do they even believe any of this? And I love that the show kind of, there's moments like when Mama's dying at the beginning. We see that episode, the last episode of season 1, and the first thing that Eli says is, we got to pray. And they're at that point, there's not really a lot of eyes on them. So I think there's part of them that are in this, that are the folks who have some sort of belief. They've just got it really messed up, man. It's really messed up.
Right. And, I think that's a really interesting point, Mark, that, there are so many clergy who say, I don't know if I even believe this anymore. But I think when you're talking about, mainline Protestant folks or liberal clergy, I hope when push comes to shove, they would say, but the ethical stances that I'm teaching, regardless of what my beliefs look like,
Uh-huh.
I believe in what I'm teaching in terms of how we should interact with one another and the kind of social policy that we should be moving forward with. But in the case of Falwell, he said he didn't believe any of that either. he just liked, his political position. He liked the power that he got from it. He liked being the president of the university, and he liked having a lot of money. And
well, and I think
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's definitely Jesse in the show. If there's one that
Definitely.
really doesn't believe anything, it's Jesse. I mean, he sees Christianity as a great tool to achieve power and money. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But
Mark, I've got to tell you.
Go ahead.
Can I tell you a little tiny spoiler for the second season?
Yeah, dude, please. This is not a spoiler-free episode.
That's right. Not even for you, right? I'm going to go ahead and tell you this.
I am not that special.
In season 2, one of the kind of funny things, there are a couple funny things that happened, but Kelvin, the youngest gemstone, who we find out came later in life, he starts one of these, these like buff guy groups who like rip the phone books and all that. What do you call those groups? Yeah, like the muscle men for faith groups.
Right.
And it's hilarious. I think one thing that's interesting about the show too is that I think Kelvin clearly is maybe gay or bi, and we don't see a lot.
They're at least setting us up to see that that's probably what's going on. It might not be, but they're giving some indications.
And it's interesting too that in the show that they don't seem to have any issue with that. I mean, at one point Jesse thinks that Gideon is gay, and Gideon's not, but Jesse doesn't seem to have any issue with that. So it's interesting that some of those values that have been purported by some fundamentalists are not values that the gemstones seem to share.
Well, it may be like if this is going to continue to be a reflection of real life. It might be that once that issue can be used to gain political power, to make money, to anything like that, it might be that it becomes an issue, which would be sort of a beautiful way of showing it really didn't matter to them until they realized that they could use it to leverage something that they wanted. But that does bring up, so we've got these massive mega churches. And some of them definitely, we know from Falwell, aren't really believing anything that they're saying, but they're really a money-making machine. And they're all tax-free. Like there's a misunderstanding of what that means. I mean, the church itself doesn't pay sales tax and that kind of thing. But the employees still get taxed for Social Security and regular national and state taxes and all of that. It's not like a pure nobody gets taxed kind of thing. Right. But there's certainly advantages there. What are your thoughts on? Let's start with just what are your thoughts on mega churches like, and I mean like the Gemstones, being in a special category where they get out of taxes and so many things.
I mean, I think we see them purposefully abuse that in the show to make that exact point, right? That these huge churches shouldn't be exempt, because there's, I guess it's in the second season. So in the second season, Eli is approached from someone from his past who wants him to launder money for his organization and to use the church to launder the money. And so Eli has to decide whether or not he's going to do that. And so I think that's kind of prodding that issue. Yeah. Should churches be tax exempt or not? But this is a conversation broader than just evangelical mega churches or fundamentalist churches. Sure. This is a conversation that I have heard a lot. Should churches be tax exempt at all? And I've heard this, on the liberal end as well. Should we be able to say, kind of whatever we want and not have to worry about taxes? Or do we ethically want to pay taxes because we believe that taxation helps to provide services that we think are essential? And so I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, it is an interesting question. It's a complicated question because you've got everything from, like you said, the ethical, moral thing of shouldn't we want to spend taxes, particularly if that's a really big if that I just threw out there, particularly if the government is spending it in ways that actually lifts up citizens, particularly those who struggle the most. But there's also the question of separation of church and state and how far does it get complicated. I think our biggest problem in this, because this has been a real issue, particularly on social media, that you see a lot, even in progressive world. You don't see it so much in the conservative Christian world, but particularly out of atheist and groups who are saying this is not really fair. And with groups like the Gemstones, boy, it really simply isn't. Like,
it is.
I don't understand what you're getting an exemption for, because all you're doing is making money. You're not actually improving the lives of anybody in any way whatsoever, which is why I would say we've messed up the argument. Shouldn't there be a benchmark that has to be met if you're going to be tax exempt?
Yeah, that's a great question because, I think a lot of churches like this too don't improve people's lives, as you said. In fact, often they will ask to see your tax return to ensure that you're actually tithing 10% to the church so that the people who want their coffers lined can get them lined and they can make the amount of money they want to make.
There's a non-denominational church right here in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I am. I don't know if they still do it, but I know early on in their rise to fast fame, at least locally in terms of growing their church, you had to sign a sheet of paper so that allowed the ministers to go to your place of business and get told exactly what you know. This
is awful.
You had to join the church. You had to sign a piece of paper so that you could then go. The minister could go and find out from your corporation how much money you make, so that they could ensure that you were tithing 10%. I mean, if that's not gemstone move, I don't know what's a gemstone move. I mean, seriously,
that's the most gemstone move there could be. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So, I think one of the things that, of course, runs through my mind too is, why do people keep coming back to this church? And I've got to admit, that's the same kind of question that I have whenever I see people go to these kind of churches in real life too. What is it about this that gets people to come?
Isn't it that it is a feel-good church? Like you don't get challenged a lot at the Gemstone Church. You get told that no matter how bad things are going for you, it'll get better if you believe hard enough. And all of this behind the scenes stuff that we're getting to see, very little of it is making it out into the public.
That's a good point.
Because there have been large churches, not necessarily mega churches, where when people found out and it was, the press got a hold and told the story of what's really going on, people did stop going. So, I mean, I think part of it is that it's the optics. They've created this great facade of what a wonderful group they are, and how, I don't know if you've ever been to a mega church that was like that, but it's hard not to leave feeling like, well, I can see where it would be hard for people not to leave feeling really kind of lifted up and elated and positive, no matter how bad something had been in the past week. And it might be one of the few places where they get that in life. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing, but it's like a drug. Things are tough. I'm struggling, but I go here, and at least for the 2 hours that I'm in worship and the hour or so afterwards, I feel good. I feel good about myself. I feel good about life. I feel like, and so I think that's part of it. I mean, I don't know.
That's a good point, Mark. I think so. And one of the things I think that's, a point here is, is worship entertainment only? Is it only about feeling good? And I think that's one of the questions that we find in the Gemstone. I'm one who believes that, church can be fun as well as meaningful. Right. But I think that where you transition from that is whenever the only purpose of it is keeping you entertained, getting your
Right.
money, and making you feel good. But entertainment is fun, which is why it's probably time for us to move to the most entertaining part of our show, the hashtag game. What do you say we listen to the drop, we come back for the hashtag game?
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're glad you stuck with us to the end for the fun stuff. So last week we had a hashtag game. We're trying to get this going again, and it went pretty well. We've got some really great folks playing along and some interesting comments. So I want to encourage, first of all, before we get into the one that we should play this week, I want to encourage folks to play along with us. You can do it on Twitter. You can do it on Facebook. And the way you do it, some folks are very used to this kind of thing, and some folks are not really sure what we're talking about when we talk about a hashtag game. And so you use a hashtag, which is the number sign, and then a string of words, no spaces, to represent something. It might be, since we're talking about mega churches, it might be hashtag bless life. Those kinds of things where you're just making a comment about something that's going on. And so we're not going to go that way for this one. But we do. Really, honestly, it's so much fun. It's a way to stay connected to all the other folks who are like-minded who watch the show with us throughout the week to play these and think about these kind of things. So since we're doing gemstones, I had this thought, Caleb.
Yeah.
So that's
hashtag blessed. No.
Hashtag blessed. No. So there's a lot of things that go on in the Gemstone Church that should not be going on in the Gemstone Church.
Almost everything.
Right. So
is there anything that's going on in the Gemstone Church that's supposed to be going on in church?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I don't have an easy answer for that.
Me neither.
Maybe after season 2, we'll figure something out. I have no idea.
That's right.
But here's my suggestion for our hashtag game this week.
Okay.
Hashtag it happened in church. So the hashtag sign, and then just one long word, it happened in church. Because let's face it, even if you go to a pretty nice church and you feel great, a very social justice oriented church with great leadership, all of that kind of stuff, there's some strange, absurd, confusing, and sometimes funny things that go on in church. And I kind of feel like that might be a good one for us. I'm going to admit right off the top of I don't know that I have one that I can pull out instantly. Do you have a thought?
I've got one, man. Churches are weird. And here's what I'm thinking. Confusing church lingo. So I'm thinking like, oh, we know her heart. Or I'm just going to go love on him. Or when you're like thinking about something, let me just pray on that. Or washed in the blood. Hashtag it happened in church.
Should not be happening in church.
That's right.
Well, and there's some serious things.
Stuff.
Yeah, and you make a point there also that there's some serious things that go in church that shouldn't be happening in church, like hating on any particular group of people. And it's it should be surprising that it happened in church, but also there'll be plenty of funny things. I really encourage people, please take some time, play along on your own Facebook page. Just push the hashtag in there, add hashtag Moonshine Jesus Show, just and play along. It's always a lot of fun, and it gets honestly, I can tell you from the earlier version of the Moonshine Jesus Show, you will make new friends playing this game. Folks who have some similar perspectives in what the world should be like and what Christianity should be like. So it's not only just fun to play along, but it's a great way to expand your group of folks who you process things with and think through who are being and what our spiritual life looks like.
Yeah, I loved seeing some of these come in last week, and I think it's going to be fun watching some of these come in this week. So do it.
Absolutely.
Wait.
So please play along. It happened in church. Strange, absurd, confusing, funny things that happen in church, like two guys drinking alcohol and talking about spirituality on a podcast. So, but it's been a blast, Caleb. It's been a blast.
It's been great, Mark. Cheers to you.
Cheers to you, sir. And we'll catch you all next week on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
The Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine Jesus.